rebuilders have to turn their team around eventually, but they're not contenders yet. And I think that's something that often gets missed in the Dynasty community. Not all rebuilders are the same. Rebuilders that are ready to make that next push should be out here trying to acquire Ken Walker, and it can be tough when they are producing at a high level on a grand stage. That's not to say it's impossible. Now you might be thinking, well, not in my league, bro. You'd be surprised at how many times you can get deals done when you think there's no way that player is getting sold. You cannot tell me you have not had someone else acquire a player only to have you say, man, I would have paid more for that if I knew. If I knew you are selling. Ken Walker is one of those types of players. If you're new here, welcome in, have a seat, and join us as we talk about 3 players that have been traded the most in Dynasty over the last couple of weeks. We are going to look at where I have them valued in the Dynasty Points trade tier chart that has been updated in the Fantasy Points Discord. We're going to talk about some data, and then we're going to go through some trades that have happened with real fantasy managers. So as you can see here, we have the dynastydaddy.com graph of players that have been traded the most, and there's 3 names on here that I feel are the most important. They just so happen to be the largest of the running back bulbs here. So of course we're talking about Kenneth Walker, Breece Hall, and Woody Marks on today's episode. We should kick things off with Kenneth Walker. Dynasty managers have been waiting for Kenneth Walker to get a solo role for years, and it looks like now they have it after the Zach Charbonnet knee injury that was suffered in the playoffs, putting the start of his next season in jeopardy. There's one major problem. Ken Walker's a potential free agent, and their offensive coordinator could be on the move. So let's talk about what we do know. Dynasty managers have held on to Ken Walker with the hopes that he gets the job. Now, we didn't want it to come via injury, but that's what we have to work with right now. And Dynasty managers tend to hold on to the last thing we see the most. Like I talk about all the time, performances in the fantasy finals will help eliminate a rough start or a rough season for a player. If the last thing we see is success in the fantasy playoffs, but the last thing we're seeing from Kenneth Walker is a trip to the Super Bowl where he has been carrying a lot of the Seattle offense on his back post Charbonnet injury. So we are definitely going to be holding on to what we're seeing in the playoffs. 178 rushing yards, 100% of the team's carries inside the 5, 9 missed tackles forced, and one that's going to live on highlight reels for a long time, as it should. He's been super efficient with a 4.6 plus yards per carry. He's got 4 rushing touchdowns to lead running backs in the NFL playoffs. The production on the ground is one of the main reasons the Seahawks are even in the big dance. So what's the reason to have pause? Well, let's talk about what we don't know. First off, obviously, where is he going to play in 2026? We don't know. I feel like a lot of times for free agents, the best place for them is where they broke out. So we don't know what's going to happen. Now, there was a little bit more clarity pre-Charbonnet injury. Ken Walker likely going to move on, I felt. Charbonnet is going to take the bulk of the workload, I felt. We're going to get 2 potential standalone running backs for Dynasty. Now, I'm a little more hesitant that Ken Walker even gets to free agency. Is that a franchise tag? Do they just bring him back after, again, really blossoming as a player that Dynasty and just fantasy managers in general were hoping that we would get? And then most of all, what is the next offense going to look like? If Kubiak leaves, is Ken Walker still hyper efficient with whoever they bring on? We obviously know where Ken Walker succeeds. He can be a hit or miss type player, kind of a home run type running back, but he's been catching a few more passes. Is the next offensive coordinator going to see that and use that, help grow that part of the offense? We're not sure. So there's uncertainty with Ken Walker, and that's usually where you can get the biggest price discrepancy for you to be able to buy. His ADP tends to hover around RB20. That is just a smash price. So now let's look at where I have him in the updated trade tier chart so we can start looking at the process of buying or selling Ken Walker. So as you can see, I have here a small piece of the Dynasty Points trade tier chart, and let's talk about what we have on screen here. As you can see, I have Kenneth Walker in the high risk upside portion of the chart. That is about a 1.25 to a 1.5 plus base first evaluation. It means you're probably going to have to pay anywhere from, a first and a second, maybe a little bit more to acquire Ken Walker. In my opinion, I'm not selling for less than that, but I have him here in the buying section for both contenders and rebuilders, and I have him set as a priority. That just means I'm willing to overpay this price point if I have to acquire him. And what we're going to do is we're going to check live trades to see how close this evaluation is and how far off I might be. So you might think that why I would have both contenders and rebuilders, because eventually rebuilders have to turn their team around eventually, but they're not contenders yet. And I think that's something that often gets missed in the Dynasty community. Not all rebuilders are the same. You can be retooling, you can be rebuilding. So for me, I have it where team builders that are ready to make that next push should be out here trying to acquire Ken Walker, and it can be tough when they are producing at a high level on a grand stage, but that's not to say it's impossible. Now you might be thinking, well, not in my league, bro. Well, if it's not in your league, this might not be for you for that particular league, but you'd be surprised at how many times you can get deals done when you think there's no way that player is getting sold. You cannot tell me that in Dynasty you have not had someone else acquire a player only to have you say, man, I would have paid more for that if I knew. If I knew you were selling. Ken Walker is one of those types of players. He is a priority buy for me. He is the type of player that sits at RB20 and the moment he signs, jump to RB8 because the running back landscape, it kind of sucks. And the rookie class taking hits at the Senior Bowl, Nick Singleton hurt himself at the Senior Bowl, someone whose biggest strength is athleticism, and it doesn't look like he's going to be able to test that at the combine. Could hurt his draft stock. There's just a questionable class to begin with. So we'll see. We'll see what ends up happening with Ken Walker. I like the idea of buying Ken Walker. I think he is a phenomenal player. We've seen what he's able to do here in the playoffs. And that's just the playoffs. We've seen him be very good in the regular season as well. It's just super frustrating when you watch Ken Walker go from 20 to 20, and then Zach Charbonnet gets the carry inside the 5, and he's the one that ends up scoring. But even before this injury leading up to it, we saw big performances from Ken Walker. Now, that's where the dynasty managers tend to be fickle. Of course, it's hard to buy when someone blows up and they put the player on the block. We all know that they're trying to sell for above, but I think Ken Walker is one of the players where it's going to be worth the price. Let's check in on some recent trades that were done for Ken Walker and see if we still believe. So a lot of the trades that we're going to look at here paint a picture of the tier that I had him in previously in this video and on this episode. And I like a lot of these deals. I have him in and around the rookie 104 pick, and we're seeing prices of Tony Pollard and the 109 for Kenneth Walker and Brenton Strange. That is in a start 8, 10-team, 1 quarterback. I love that deal in a 1 QB. Tony Pollard obviously had a booming end of season, but opportunity to replicate that might be limited. And then the 109 in a single quarterback league in a projected weak draft class. Now, I am not a scout. I am just looking at the value of that pick, and this feels like an absolute smash to me. This is why he's a priority buy. Now, the Roma Dunze, Emeka Egbuka, and the 108 for Chris Olave, Ken Walker feels expensive in a 2 quarterback, but I'm okay with it. I would rather have Chris Olave over Egbuka and Odunze, and I would rather have Ken Walker over Odunze and the 108, and you're getting a second, even if it is in 2028. Really like that deal. And then, of course, we've got 2 seconds, one being the 204 for Ken Walker. He's readily available. Now, I do not want to be buying Woody Marks. We're going to be talking about that later. And I would much rather Zay Flowers over the 2 backs in this 1 quarterback start 9. So there are some price differences here. Same with the Achane and Pat Bryant for Chig Okonkwo, Rashee Rice, and Ken Walker. I think I would just much rather have Achane staying away from the Rashee Rice problems. I don't want any part of that. So there's obviously some price fluctuation, but it looks like he is way easier to acquire than you might think. These are all trades from today. This is being recorded January 30th. So these were all from today. These are all happening in real leagues right now. So it looks to me like Ken Walker remains a buy. It looks like I have him overpriced in the trade tier chart just based on these trades alone. Now, obviously, that's a pretty small sample size, and it's going to be different for your leagues, but this is something to be looking out for here in the future. In fantasy football, we're always looking for an edge, and we have the opportunity for you to get the biggest edge that you can with the early bird special. If you subscribe now, your subscription is good till March 31st of 2027 at the cheapest price it will ever be. That's 20% off any subscription. You can use promo code THEWORM and get an additional 5% off. Why might you want to participate with fantasypoints.com next season? Well, we had the most accurate projections last season. It's not hyperbole. It's not blowing smoke. We had the most accurate projections in the entire industry in 2025. So get yourself in with us for 2026 with the early bird special. The next player we're going to talk about today is Breece Hall, another potential free agent running back. So let's talk about what we know. Breece Hall, as I mentioned, pending free agent that has shown a truly elite upside in seasons past, even after recovering from a significant injury. However, his points per game has seen a slow decline over the last couple of seasons. As you can see here on the screen, 17.1, 15.2, and 13.1 points per game this year. Obviously, we know the quality of the offense has dipped significantly, so we have to look at things a little bit differently and not just in the grand scheme of total points scored. Like the fact that he bounced back in a big way, forcing more missed tackles this year than last year. Obviously, 2023, where he was off that phenomenal start, 59 missed tackles, only 27 last year, but 44 is a great bounce back number. Really something that we need to see from a player like him that does rely a little bit on shiftiness, speed, quickness out of the backfield, and an offense that's really not going to do him any favors. I don't suspect that changing. I don't think Breece Hall makes it to free agency. Kind of the same thing as Ken Walker. Now, apparently, the Jets had the opportunity to trade Breece Hall to the Chiefs, but the Jets did not get their required third-round pick, and they held on to him. I do not see a team letting go of a running back that is this good in a contract year to not re-sign him and let him walk for free on a team that saw them trade Sauce Gardner, Quinnen Williams, other star players on that team. I think he stays a Jet, and I think that is why his dynasty value has stayed a little bit lower than you would expect for such a dominant player, such a big named player. And if people are scared off because of the name or the logo on the helmet, it gives us an opportunity to buy. Yes, he's a Jet, yet it might be gross, but he clearly has some quickness and shiftiness still, and he is a pass-catching running back. He is still very much the workhorse type back. And like my good friend Wyatt pointed out, also shout out Wyatt, you should be going and following him, WyattB_FF on X. He points out that Breece Hall was fourth among running backs in breakaway runs, despite playing on an absolute dumpster fire of an offense. He's forcing missed tackles. He's got a great explosive run rate. He's one of the best in the league at breaking away, which, yes, he will have to do. He's still very, very good and not lacking confidence, as you can see. Breece Hall himself gave Wyatt the like. He obviously knows the situation that he is in, so he does not lack confidence. And I love that. Personally, I love that players are aware. A little bit of love to the fantasy community with that one. A lot of fantasy in bios on X or Twitter, and it's always good to see players in the mix, if you would. So confidence, not a problem for someone like Breece Hall. And you know, that's not data, that's not actionable information, but I like to see it. So let's have a look at where I have Breece Hall right now on the tier sheet. have him in the same value column, but just a different designation. We like to really get in depth at Dynasty Points with the tier sheet. I have him in has upside, but is safer for that same 1.25 to 1.5 base first. Now, there's no plus here, so I'm not really looking to pay more than that for somebody like Breece Hall. Even though his ADP is higher than somebody like Kenneth Walker right now, I feel like Kenneth Walker has the opportunity to hit by $1 billion. I feel like we just know what we get with somebody like Breece Hall. I'm very much happy pivoting if I need to. If you're worried about the Quinshon Judkins injury, if you're worried about, well, just that offense in general. I prefer Zay Flowers personally, but if you need to pivot off of a wide receiver for a running back, I completely understand that kind of tiering sideways. Now, obviously, when you get into Superflex and you see Jordan Love there, that might set you back a moment, but I just personally believe quarterbacks are overpriced in Superflex to begin with. That's just the way I approach the game. And then you got some injured / again, it's Cleveland and it's dangerous player like Harold Fandon, Tucker Kraft. So very easily a pocket to buy Breece Hall based on my trade tier chart. I like the safety, and I think that his value right now is probably the lowest it can be, because if he does get away from the Jets in the offseason, I feel like almost no matter where he goes, if you look at the teams that are supposedly targeting running backs, Chicago with Ben Johnson, Kansas City has been a destination for years. His value is going to boom, and I want to be a little bit early. But that being said, let's look at the designation I have on Breece Hall right now, and I have him as a temporary hold for both contenders and rebuilders. I am not in a hurry to run to sell Breece Hall, but I'm also not in a big hurry to buy, because though he has some safety attached to him in Dynasty, he has name value, there's always going to be a market for him in your league, it can go up. The price can go up. So if you're looking to sell, selling right now may not be your best option. And I believe at worst, this is where his value is going to stay. So I'm happy to hold, and the price may not be this simple. And what we're going to do is we're going to double check some trades again from our friends at dynastydaddy.com and see where and how close our trade chart lands with these trades that I found from today, the day that we're recording this. So be interesting to see, but I feel like he's a little bit more expensive than what I have listed and what I am comfortable trading him for or trading for him here. So just right off the rip, you see some of the names on these trades, and immediately I know that he is way more expensive than I have him listed on the trade tier chart and where I'm comfortable moving. I can already tell you, for the most part, he is not going to be a buy for me by the end of this video. Let's have a look. DeAndre Swift, who had a really good year, and then Breece Hall. You've got Oronde Gadsden getting Mike McDaniel, the 110 and the 210. I like this price for Breece Hall. I'm not as big on Oronde as some other people are. This is a start 10, 2 quarterback, non-tight end premium. Getting rid of that tight end premium, this does make it a smash selection for Breece Hall. I think DeAndre Swift is also going to still maintain, value in season. I view him as more of a redraft plus player, a player that you can count on for sure one more year and maybe a little bit after. That's just how I refer to those players that don't have a long-term dynasty outlook. That's how I view DeAndre Swift. And then you get trades like a 28 first, a 28 second, and a 4th, and Travis Hunter for Breece Hall. Just on value alone, I feel like that's expensive. Now, I am not in the Travis Hunter wide receiver camp. I fear he will play more DB. I don't like moving picks that far ahead. I do not like moving my 28 picks. I feel like it restricts my movement, especially this early in an off season. So this is going to be a no from me. Kyren Williams or Breece Hall, that one strikes a nerve for me. I just prefer Kyren Williams. He just produces. We're already seeing the Blake Corum takeover again across the internet and in dynasty communities. I just don't see that happening. He was phenomenal again in the playoffs as well. I would rather have the sure thing here in Kyren Williams. Maybe he doesn't have the same ceiling that Breece Hall might have, but that consistency is just hard to say no to. Breece Hall, the 201 and a 27 first for Xavier Worthy, who really struggled in his second year. Granted, we have more Rashee Rice stuff that we have to pay attention to here. Mike Evans, who may not be on the Bucs anymore and is on his way out. The 207, the 304, and the 102. I actually kind of like this deal. Maybe Breece Hall is still a buy for me. Breece Hall, the 201, I really like those prices. The 201 is still a really solid pick. And then you get a 27 first. So a 27 first, I would send Xavier Worthy, Mike Evans, and the 207 for a 27 first right now. So you're getting the 201 and Breece Hall for the 102 and a 304. I don't hate that's a little bit more expensive for me, given where I have him on the tier sheet. Again, we have that, right around the 105 into the 104 potentially. So a little bit higher than I want to pay in that terms. But again, that 27 first really, really helps make that for me. I would do that deal. Speaking of the 104, Caleb Johnson, who is a nice, decent buy low here, Breece Hall, and then a one quarterback 104 and 302. I would pay this price. I think he is a little bit more attainable than I thought. The one that gives me the most pause here is obviously Amon-Ra St. Brown. I am not trading Etienne Hall, the 108 and the 208. I'm not giving up my Amon-Ra for that. I'm not offering that for Breece Hall. I would take Amon-Ra St. Brown here every single time. Same with the Chris Olave. I prefer Chris Olave over Breece Hall, especially this time of the year. And I have no real side or take here on the Jordan Love, RJ Harvey, Cam Ward, Breece Hall thing. So if those are the trades that we're basing this off of, I feel like we are in the right spot here for overall value right now with Breece Hall. I'm still holding. These aren't real smash out of the park trades for me. Be cautious. Try to pay a little bit less than these if you are looking to acquire Breece Hall. So hopefully it gave you a little bit of an idea of some trade concepts for you. I just think the data is going to look really good and even better next year with Breece Hall, no matter where he is. I definitely can see a world where he is back to being a 15 plus points per game type player with that high ceiling. Definitely prefer Ken Walker over him, especially at cost. Let's move to our third player. Our third player might be a little bit controversial, but I'm done with Woody Marks as of right now. He's been a sell for me since he really got that second round rookie pick value hype for me in the preseason. And then he had the breakout games, if you would, 27 points. I think this is based off one really long screen for the most part in week 4. Then he had a couple back-to-back 10 plus point games. Then he had the 16-point game. And then after that, another 15-point game in week 14. And just a lot of duds, absolute week losing type weeks, even going into the playoffs. 6.8 points week 18, 8.5 in week 17. He's just not for me. Definitely struggled. Granted, yes, the offensive line was not ideal for Woody Marks. It wasn't ideal for anyone on the Houston offense, if I'm being completely honest. But I don't think he himself does anything special enough to really overcome that. And the pass catching role, which we were all really excited for, really didn't do him any favors. Not as much as we thought it might when Joe Mixon went down. Now, this is while he led Houston in carries and points per game in his rookie year. He did not hit 10 points per game on the season, and that is disappointing to me to end at a 9.1. Really, we're only competing with Nick Chubb, Daria Gumbawale, and Jawar Jordan towards the end of the season. But like I mentioned, the pass catching role not amounting to what we wanted. A negative 0.6 yards per target, pass rate over expectation, only 24 receptions on 36 targets, on 204 routes run, 7 designed targets. I expected that to be much higher, much more usage in the passing game. And we can blame coaches and we can blame situation, the good defense, etc. But again, you have to be good enough to overcome that. Now, 33.4% of the routes, I think that's really good. The ADOT being low, the air yard share not being where we kind of want it, the design rate not really where we want it. I'm going to be out. I'm going to be out on Woody Marks. And it really does show the difference in hype around the Dynasty community and just the fantasy NFL even community. Co-host Andy Buckler posted, he's just making a joke about Woody Marks. And after the big game, you see the hype come back. Now, this is where Woody Marks really started getting moved. A lot of people were buying for the seconds plus. We talked about on the Market Report, my podcast that I do with Andy Buckler every single week, trading Woody Marks for Derrick Henry straight up. And there was some pushback here because of the game like this people really want to latch on to. But hype changes fast. Immediately after, in the playoffs, we saw the downside of a player like Woody Marks and how fragile his dynasty value can be. 14 carries, 17 yards, a 1.2 yards per carry, and a fumble. His dynasty value, he was not tradable for the prices that you got just the week prior. He is not a player that has sustained dynasty value. You need him to have a big game to be able to move him. He's just as likely to lose you a week as he is to just sort of help you in a week, not really even win you a week. And those are just players that I want to move off of, especially at a position like running back. It's hard to imagine a player like him having a lasting impression that's positive on dynasty managers, especially as we talked about the lasting effects of a player, the last thing we see them do. I find that to be tough. So I have them in the late second tier of players, in and around that 211, the 210, the 209. I'm comfortable selling for prices like that. I would much rather have the other soon-to-be sophomores, the Ja'Cory Krosky-Merritt, the Kyle Manunga. I feel like they just showed a little bit more. I feel like they're just better players. I would rather have guys like Stephon Diggs who bounce back. Juwan Johnson in tight end premium was an absolute smash to have. George Kittle, yes, he suffered a terrible, horrendous injury, but I think he's going to carry more production value in Dynasty moving forward. Isaiah Likely obviously has big opportunity. Rico Dowdle was pretty good for stretches. Definitely a usable player. I just think I prefer other players in this tier to the average than somebody like Woody Marks, who, again, I feel is a little bit more fragile in his value. Again, you can get these tiers in the Fantasy Points Discord in the Dynasty section, which is free to use right now. Let's have a look at where I have Woody Marks officially. I'm selling on both and aggressive, meaning I would take a little bit less than this if I had to get a deal done to facilitate. He's definitely the type of player that I personally think I would use to package up some other assets and upgrade more than I would just straight sell for a third, because those thirds so rarely hit and become meaningful dynasty assets. So that's where I have him. Again, you can get that in the Discord. Little bit more than just a buy sell. We like to give a little bit more in-depth looks at our buys and sells. So let's have a look now at some of these trades. Woody Marks, the 408, the 409 for a 27-2. That is a smash. We definitely take that every single time. Woody Marks and the 201, or Cortland Sutton and Tyler Algier. I think I actually want the best asset in this deal, which is the 201. So in that case, I would take him. But a 26 third or Woody Marks, I lean Woody Marks here because, again, we just talked about the third and not necessarily wanting to do that straight up. But I could see why somebody would want to do that. Pat Bryant in a third or Woody Marks. I'll take Pat Bryant in the third here personally. Brandon Ayuk, even though his career is in a really rough place, I think the upside for him is still better than somebody like Woody Marks. Obviously, we talked about the Woody Marks Kenneth Walker thing in the Ken Walker trade section. I'm taking the Zay Flowers side on that 100%. And then you got a trade like this is what I mean. Use him to package to go and get something else. Tank Dell, who might come back and play next year. Woody Marks, Matthew Golden, who had the one game in the playoffs, and a 27-2 to get you a legitimate alpha type wide receiver. Even though I'm not as big on Nico Collins as some people, I still think Nico Collins carries a ton of value and has legit week winning upside. And you're getting Zach Charbonnet here on the cheap, bouncing back from an injury for a 28 third. I like these deals for getting rid of Woody Marks off of your dynasty roster. I like some of these for holding on to him. Again, if it's just a straight third, not necessarily something that I want to do. Not all the time. If I have to, I will. So those are three players most traded in Dynasty right now. What I think about them, what I would trade for them, what I would not, some trade concepts. And again, you get a ton of information in the Fantasy Points Discord, which again, you can get here in the description. Thank you for watching. Remember to like and subscribe. It's free to do. It helps us go a long way. Stay locked in with us as we try to provide you even more Dynasty content every single week with Fantasy Points. Remember that clear eyes and full hearts can never lose, and that your best days, they're always spent tilting. We'll see you next time.